Welcome to another edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest at Greenlight Ventures presentation, and we can start by saying, and this was a line from what I thought was a very good movie, not necessarily a classic, but certainly worth watching, and I've probably seen it 20, 30 times, and that was American Gangster, Russell Crowe, Denzel Washington, and it was about this whole drug thing that was going on in New York City, and the importation of such by American soldiers that were in the Vietnam War. And there's a line from the Chinese general who was brilliantly portrayed in this movie, who was the liaison to the drug world and the importation of massive amounts of heroin that were being circulated around the country by Denzel in American Gangster. And he looks at Denzel. I don't know if he was talking about gambling or not, but he looks at Denzel Washington before he takes this final shipment, which ultimately doomed him, and says, "Quitting while you're ahead is not the same as quitting." Think about that, you degenerate gamblers out there. Quitting while you're ahead is not the same as quitting. And that gets into in-game betting. We'll get into that a bit later on in the program. But we do want to tell you, if you are betting, BetOnline is the place to go. That is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on while the games are in play. If you think you really know your stuff, get in on the $200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against the spread every week, and you have a chance to win weekly prizes and also a shot at $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino. You can play poker. You can play blackjack. You can indulge in over 150 slot games that they make available to you, and really have yourself a blast, win a lot of money. Head on to the website today. That's BetOnline. The game starts here. I thought I was going to need a prop. We weren't able to be with you yesterday. I had a little technical issue, unfortunately, as I came on to do the show, and I smelled something funky going on around the broadcast site that I'm working out of here. I thought maybe somebody was working on the roof of the condo building that I live in, and I was getting some kind of weird scent, and it turned out my power pack on my soundboard blew out. Weren't able to come to you. Had a couple of winners for you. Oh, yeah, I believe that, Defo. But I did like the winning side in both baseball games yesterday. Never go against Cy Young, as you had Skubal on the mound for Detroit. And then Kansas City appeared to me to have a little bit of a pitching edge over the New York Yankees. Although the starter, Reagans, only went 4 innings, nonetheless, the Royals were able to prevail there 4-2. So we had a nice winning parlay for you. Might have buried you taking the Saints and the 5.5 points in the game against the Chiefs, who somehow been eking out victories. But I did have a prop here. I thought I was going to have to use this. In fact, I thought I was going to have to crack this right over my head, because all week long last week, we had kind of a so-so week. Ended up 500 with our handicappers that we feature throughout the week on the show. And I was talking about, I like to take a look at the opening lines when they first come out in the NFL and see a game that really stands out to me as being way out of whack with what my thinking is. And I thought that game in London, which began 9:30 Eastern. If you were in Vegas, you didn't even have to bother going to your room. You just went straight from the bars and whatever you were doing in terms of debauchery at night, right into the sports book for a 6:30 start. Minnesota Vikings in London against the New York Jets. I saw no reason for the Jets to be even given close consideration to the 4-0 Vikings. Jets seemed to be a team in total disarray. We saw all kinds of different consternation on the sideline there, acrimony going on. Rodgers has the towel over his head. That's the lasting image. And you're thinking, these guys have no shot. They're not a very good team. And a lot of money has been wasted on quarterbacks trying to chase that Super Bowl dream. And it's really gone up in smoke. Deshaun Watson, you would bench him if you weren't paying him so much money at this stage. And Aaron Rodgers, for all the money they gave him and the assets they had to give away to make the acquisition, he hasn't done anything yet and doesn't really look to be the same guy. Not sure if that's the impact of the team overall, but 3 picks in the ball game, including one that clinched it for Minnesota. It shouldn't have come down to that, though. And I thought, after touting all week long that this was my best bet of my lifetime, that I was going to have to just crush an egg over my head right here on the show and take one on the chin. Maybe an omelet wouldn't have been good enough, but we ended up prevailing in that one. So it turned out okay. And there was a game yesterday that I thought at 1.5 on the Monday Night Football game coming up this week. The Buffalo Bills looked to me like a very safe bet against the New York Jets. That line immediately jumped to 3 points. So now you're in a different ballgame here. And yet I'd still be willing to lay the three because I just don't think the Jets are very good. People want to believe in them, and I think it's a belief that is ill-founded, as I'm not sure that they're really going to come back to the stature that people have anticipated they would have with Aaron Rodgers a year ago. Here's a guy that always measures up, and we welcome him to the program. Now, our handicappers fared okay last week. We didn't bury you, but we didn't make you any money. A combined 7-7. Unfortunately, the professor, after getting off to a sensational start with a miracle comeback win by Syracuse on Friday night, as it looked like the Orange, my alma mater, were buried in Las Vegas, like those signs out there in the desert. Buried like Joe Pesci after his incident in the movie Casino, where they had just beat the shit out of him with baseball bats and then threw him in the ground there. And how did they have it? Looked like a cornfield. How did they have a cornfield in Las Vegas? I don't know. You could grow anything there except dead. And I mean, it looked over as UNLV takes a lead late in the ball game. Syracuse comes back somehow, gets a game time touchdown, wins the thing in overtime. Got off to a good start, but then he lost 3 games in a very topsy-turvy, almost unpredictable, unfathomable college football weekend. We welcome to the show Scotty M. And Scotty ended up rebounding last week with a big win at the tail end with the Green Bay Packers winning. Finished up at 2-2 last week here on the show. And wow, Scotty, I mean, have you ever seen anything like it? You're a young man and you have the appearance of a young guy. I don't know. If people were guessing your age, they'd probably say somewhere early 40s maybe. And now here I am at 73. I've been a sports fan as far back as my earliest cognizant memory. I don't know that I've seen a weekend like that of game results with wild finishes. I mean, the only thing missing was if you dug up Frazier and Ali and recontested the Thrilla in Manila. I don't know you could have asked for much more excitement across the board. Baseball, college football, pro football. How are you, my friend? How are you feeling this week?
Good man, I'm feeling great. Yeah, I mean, it's the wild and wacky football season. Look at the Miami Hurricanes being down by 20 some odd points, coming back to win that game at the end. I mean, teams blowing 4 touchdown leads this year. It's been crazy out there, but it keeps you on your toes from my perspective of doing this, trying to figure these numbers and dissect these games. But it's not easy out there for the average guy, and I always tell that to the players out there. For you to do this on your own and just try to take shots at this, it's not easy at all.
And yet there were so many logic-defying results. I mean, you might have taken the 22 points, and people would have thought you were crazy. They would have given you a jacket that ties in the back if you said, hey, I'm going to take Vanderbilt straight up on the money line against Alabama.
Ooh.
Alabama coming off that thrilling victory over Georgia the prior week, anointed to be the number one team in the country, and they lose outright, giving up 40 points to a Vanderbilt team that was absolute dog meat. Then you had Tennessee going down to Arkansas, which I believe you made a score on the prior week,
Right.
the Arkansas Razorbacks. But I don't know that anybody could have conceived that they would beat Tennessee, a team that many were starting to tout as a possible national champion, and they may well get back in it. You mentioned the Hurricane game, which I don't know, that targeting call or non-targeting call was a huge impact. And we're thinking, how heavily is officiating involved in the outcome of these games, maybe more so than ever, and more pronounced than ever, some of these calls that go the wrong way, that
Oh,
clearly, by any definition, looked like targeting. Cal would have retained the ball and put the Hurricanes in a much more compromising position. Instead, they end up losing on a last-minute drive. They did get the ball back with a chance to do something, but weren't able to cash it in. Mizzou going down and getting trounced by Texas A&M. And then I think this was more predictable. Michigan, and in fact, that was one of Troy West's games. Michigan losing to Washington to the point spread. But in your wildest dreams, have you seen a weekend like that? The top 10 was virtually destroyed.
well, you always see it if you notice every year. There's always a couple of crazy weekends out of the season where a lot of teams, it seems to be like towards the middle of the season, or like it just happened actually in week 5 or week 6 of the season, where you see a lot of upsets. I don't know if these teams are just feeling good about themselves, too good about themselves, and they come in a little loose against certain opponents. Alabama, like you said, coming off that unbelievable win against Georgia. Maybe they had a little letdown going against the Vanderbilt team, figuring they were such a big favorite, they were just going to cakewalk over them. And you see that happen, especially in college football, quite a bit. Certain teams, I don't know, they don't get up for that opponent, and that opponent gets up for them, and they take advantage of it. And that's why you see these upsets. Some weekends are just crazy. They just run. They don't run true to form at all.
And that's in college football, where you're thinking, and the common wisdom has been among the degenerate brethren that we love here on the program, that college football has been far more predictable than the pros. But we've known that for some time. I mean, you get much more of a disparity in terms of talent, and a root part of that word is parity, which we've seen in evidence in the National Football League.
Yeah.
But you still had incredible finishes in the National Football League, including, again, with the Ravens, who were victimized by this when they had to toe out of bounds early in the season and destroyed everybody in the survivor pools by losing straight up to the Raiders. You had this in the Cincinnati game against the Ravens, where Cincinnati's in a position after this fumble to kick the game-winning field goal. They miss it in overtime, and right down the field, here comes Derrick Henry, and the Ravens somehow prevail and keep themselves alive with their Super Bowl hopes, while the Bengals are scratching their head and wondering what the fuck happened to us. They've gotten off to slow starts today, but do you feel that perhaps they've buried themselves into such a compromised position early in the season that they may not be a factor later on?
Are you talking about Cincinnati?
Cincinnati, yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously their backs are against the wall. I mean, 1-4 after the first 5 weeks in a tough division. I mean, the Steelers lost, that helped them out. The Ravens won. I mean, they're 1-4, but they've got so many talented players on that team. I mean, if they could even go on a nice run where they could win, let's say what they got, like 12 games left in the season. Say they win 9 out of the next 12, or whatever the case may be, if they can turn things around. They could still put themselves in a spot. I mean, when you have a guy like Joe Burrow, look at the game he had. I mean, phenomenal game. I mean, you can't take that away from him. And Chase is excellent. The defense has obviously been suspect all season. That's what's been killing them, basically, is that defense. But their offense, is there. When you got a guy like Burrow who's got so much talent, I mean, raw talent, the guy's unbelievable, and you got weapons like he has, I mean, they can easily go on a run where they can win 9 out of 12 games and put themselves in a spot where they win 10 games and they could probably eke their way into the playoffs. So I don't think their backs are against the wall. If they lose another game or two in the first six, let's say 7 games of the season, yeah, I would say it's going to be very tough uphill sledding for them. But they still got a shot in that division because of the weapons they have and the talent they have, running that offense. They got to fix that defense on. There's major issues with that defense.
And we've seen a lot of turnarounds. After week 3, I remember convincing myself that the Buffalo Bills were going to be a huge factor. I would have been tempted to maybe take a little taste for them to win the Super Bowl. And then subsequent to that, they literally lay 2 of these.
Oh, look at this.
I mean, just ugly results for the Buffalo Bills. And yet I love them this week against the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a sloppy game at best. I mean, like you said, the Jets, you can't figure them out. Buffalo, you thought there was going to be a house of fire, winning the 3 games so easily, dominating the last 9 quarters of the first 3 games they were in, just shutting everybody down. Now they lost their last 2 in a row. They got to regroup on a national televised game. Hopefully they'll come jacked up. But Josh Allen got hurt. I don't know his status exactly. I know he was banged up in that last game. Jets obviously coming back from traveling overseas, to play this week. That's going to be a tough game. I mean, this game is a very emotional game for both of these teams, and that's why the number's pretty tight on it. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. I haven't really made a selection on that game as of yet, but I'm going to dig deep into it as the week progresses.
All right, quick recap of how we did last week before we get into some selections for this week. And Scotty M's going to lead us off today. Of course, we'll have Troy West with us tomorrow. He's now 10-2 on the program after a 2-1 week. Troy West did well. Mike Jones joined us for the first time last week. Went 2-1. His baseball pick, he pulled one literally out of the grave. It was almost like the Carrie movie where the hand comes out of the grave at the end there with the New York Mets rallying. That was the Thursday game, and then they did it again later on in the second round of the postseason. He also scored with the Giants over Seattle, which took some guts to take them on the money line, but the Giants getting 6.5 turned out to be a very tasty play there. So he had a 2-1 week. We had Scotty at 2-2, and the professor, unfortunately, after that miracle win in the Syracuse UNLV game, got buried in an avalanche of upsets in the college slate and ended up 1-3. So it was 7-7 total. My big bet was, of course, Minnesota over the Jets. We had to survive that. Late rally, perhaps, by Aaron Rodgers. He throws a pick at the end of the game to ice it, but I don't think it should have come down to that. I was gargling with Xanax the entire second half in that game after it looked like Minnesota had this thing wrapped up early on, and the Jets managed to hang in there and almost pulled off the victory. So 7-7 week for the boys last week. And we gave you the bet of our lifetime here and saved ourselves, Louis. Scotty, having to crack this over my head right here on the show. So I don't know how you're feeling about this week. I know we want to get into your selections here, so let it roll. And I'm not sure if you're diving into baseball, which has been sensational also. And that was my opening was about quitting while you're ahead is not the same as quitting. I had a friend that got involved in an in-game bet in the ninth inning of that Mets game against Philadelphia the other day. Bet the Mets to win it when they were down 6-4 going to the ninth inning of the ball game, and gets the miracle two-run homer by Vientos. Now, at that point, do you go Shakespeare on that, to hedge or not to hedge? Because they immediately offer you the buyout. It was 12-1. The Mets were 12-1 dogs, down 6-4 going to the ninth. They tie it up. They offer you the early buyout. Are you tempted to take that? You would have only gotten 4-1. I thought the other approach might be just put a small amount of money by comparison on the Phillies, and then if you lose in the ninth or extra innings, all right, you at least didn't lose money after making this gutsy play. But what do you do in a situation like that? Do you just let it ride? I mean, is it unmanly to go ahead and hedge?
You know, in a situation like that, I got to be honest with you. I'd probably take the buyout because you got a team down. They got a big time home run to tie it back up. But don't forget, you still got the other team coming up. If they don't produce any more runs at that point, big edge to the home team because they got the last at bat and then they go into extra innings. But I would probably take the buyout in that spot if I got that game tied up after trailing 6-4, and I get that beautiful home run to come back to make it 6-6. I'd probably be pushing that button to get that 4-1 on my get out of town fast.
I would have been sitting on that button. That would have been fantastic. You're getting 4-1 on the fact that you tied up the ball game. The Mets had already burnt Edwin Diaz, who actually of late has been about effective as bringing in Cameron Diaz in these spots. So they had already burnt their closer there, and you're thinking to yourself, and he had coughed up the lead. You're thinking to yourself, 4-1 on that. Quitting while you're ahead, Scotty, is not the same as quitting.
I'm loving these baseball playoffs. I got to be honest with you. It's funny.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I had the Royals last night as a live dog plus 135. I put them out, and I took them at plus 1.5 runs. I laid the 165 on the money line. But I love the Royals in that game last night. I liked the matchup. I thought it was an edge. Yankees won the first game pretty handily. I thought the Royals could come back. I think there's a lot of closeness in these series. As you see, they're all 1-1 at this point. So, anything could go in baseball. I said it before the playoffs started. I thought this year was so wide open, and any team could beat any team in any series and keep moving on. So it's very interesting at this point where you got these series all basically tied up one game each. I think anything could go. Now you got the Mets coming home for their first game in a while. They've been on the road. They played that set on the road. They played the first two games in Philly. That place is going to be jacked up. You got game 3 today between Phillies and the Mets. I'm leaning a little bit, believe it or not, towards Philadelphia in this game today as a slight play. But I think Philly's got a shot to jump ahead in this series 2-1. I just think at the end that Philly's going to find a way to get through and move forward.
I don't like going against Aaron Nola. This guy usually is clutch, so I think you might be onto something there, although the crowd should be. I think even Dr. Principata is coming back from the grave. We may even see Signman there holding up the Let's Go Mets signs, which was classic back in the heyday of the New York Mets in their early existence at Shea. All right, let's get into some stuff here, Scotty. What do you have for us this week? This is Scotty M, and does a great job. He has a service out there we'll tell you about. And what are you looking at here before your adoring public on Bury Your Bookie?
Got 4 huge plays. I'll keep it short and sweet. 2 in college, 2 in the NFL. In college football, my top play, a live dog. I look for dogs. I look for the value. I like Cincinnati on the road against UCF. UCF started the season off 3-0. They've lost their last couple of games. The Cincinnati team has played tough in each of their 5 games. When they won, they won. Even when they lost, the games were very close, very tight. I like teams like that, playing close games, finding ways to win games and stay in them. I think Cincinnati +4. I might probably even get that line to +4, 4.5. But I like Cincinnati in this matchup against UCF. I think they could take advantage of this game, and I see them staying in it. Another play I like in college football is a total, and I think this team's going to explode. You talked about earlier Tennessee losing to Arkansas, and they didn't put that offense up for the first time all season. And Arkansas has been a sleeper, and they've been playing really well this year. I've used them a couple of times and done very well with Arkansas. I think that the total on this Tennessee and Florida game is going to be a shootout type of game. I could see both these teams putting points up in this game. Normally, when these teams are on, they can fire points at each other. The total's 53.5. I like this game to go over. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I could see a big bounce back for Tennessee if they want to be in the rankings. They're going to have to come out on all cylinders. I think the Gators will score points somehow, some way in the game. So I see this game being a high-scoring game. Those are my two best bets for college football.
All right, we have Cincinnati getting 4 points against UCF. The over 53 and a hook. Tennessee and the Florida Gators. I would imagine, though, you're heading towards the National Football League, Scotty M.
Yeah, I got two plays I actually like. I think reality check comes in this week for the Commanders going into Baltimore. I think they're going to run into a very high-powered offense that's on all cylinders with Jackson and the running game that they have with Derrick Henry. And their defense got to show up sooner or later. Their defense has been a little suspect for me, but I just think they're going to find a way to come into this game all cylinders, and I think it's going to be a little tough sledding for that rookie quarterback, as dynamite as he's been, and he's probably the favorite right now, easily to be Rookie of the Year after 5 weeks, but it's still early. I think Baltimore blows them out in this game. I see them winning this game by double digits. I just think this is going to be a get-up game for them. They found a way to come back, like you said last week. They've won their last 3 games in a row. I just think the Lamar powered offense with the running game of Henry and Flowers, and if the defense comes into play, and they do to shut somebody down, I think this is the week they're going to find a way to do that against that rookie. They're going to put schemes in, confuse him a little bit. So I like Baltimore. I would take that line down. It's 6.5. I'm just making this game -5. I like to buy numbers in my favor on big plays. So I like Baltimore -5. Best bet, looking for them to win by double digits. And I have one more NFL total.
All right, very good. Don't keep us in suspense, Scotty. What do you like? I mean, the fans here are already salivating, thinking they were 3-0. Although, and I want to get into how you buy that point and what it costs you. But what's your final NFL play?
I'm going to play the late game on Sunday, the Cincinnati-Giants game. I think these teams are going to score points against each other. You saw what Burrow's been doing the last couple of games, putting up 30 or more on the last few games. I think that pattern continues. I think the Giants will score points at home in this game. I could see this game easily being 52, 53. They got a total of 48, 48 and a hook. I'd be at 48 on this game all day long. And I take this game to go over. I could see a shootout. It's a national televised game. You talk about a Cincinnati wanting to win to stay in it. Well, this would be a want win for them, I think, in this game. Because if they lose to the Giants and they don't show up, and their defense has been terrible anyway. So the Giants could definitely score points if they come with the right game plan. And we know Cincinnati can definitely score points with that high-powered offense. So I like this game to go over. I think that's a big number on a game with the Giants at home. So I like the game to go over. I think they got the right number on this game for a high-scoring game.
All right, excellent. So recapping here, we have on the college slate Cincinnati +4 over UCF, over Tennessee and the University of Florida. Likes the Ravens, Scotty M does, to destroy the Commanders and this whole Daniel story, which has been kind of a Cinderella story, is it not? Because many people were not sure that he was going to be a bona fide pro quarterback, even though he was drafted so highly, and that he would insert himself into the lineup and have such an impact right away, 4-1 with the Commanders, I think is a big surprise. But they saw him as a facsimile of RG3, who had a great rookie season, which this kid is having, but then wasn't able to hold up. I mean, didn't have the stamina to stay in and what was more injury prone. had his career compromised. And really, you would have to say, as that high of a draft pick was somewhat of a bust overall, RG3. And people thought the same of Daniels, but he's acquitted himself very well. Nonetheless, you're going to throw that out and say the Ravens assert themselves in this ballgame. And then the over in the Cincinnati and Giants game, where Daniel Jones was one of those quarterbacks that everybody had thrown in the towel on. They thought he was a shot fighter and a giant, no pun intended, waste of $160 million. But all of a sudden, he was slinging a rock like they had resurrected Y.A. Tittle and looked pretty good. So maybe they can put some points on the board. As you mentioned, Cincinnati's defense has been suspect at best. All right, Scotty M., how can people find more of your stuff? I mean, you're always offering a lot of different plans and guiding people and helping them. As you said, it pays to have at least a little affirmation on your own opinion if you're not just going to go ahead and subscribe to a service and say, hey, I love this guy. So how can people find your stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. You can find me on TikTok. That's the best way. TikTok, my official channel is SM Picks, Picks. If you're interested in anything we have privately, obviously we put out free stuff all the time. We help with, we try to help out the public, try to give them games, just get a little taste of what we do. But we have a private exclusive service where you can deal directly with me one-on-one. And all you have to do is shoot me a DM. Just come to TikTok. It's real simple. SM Picks, Picks. That's it. And I'll be glad to help you out any way I can. Try to give you that winning edge that we try to offer. Looking for the value out there on a daily basis.
Excellent stuff. Scotty, always a pleasure. Looking good. I mean, is there any message, subliminal message in the fact that you're underneath a poster for the Titanic? I mean, are you sinking bookies? Certainly, you're not pioneering or guiding a sinking ship here on the show. You've been holding up very well. So good to have you on the program. Thanks so much for joining us, my friend. And Scotty M., ladies and gentlemen, always doing a great job for us on Bury Your Bookie. We'll talk to you again later on in the week.
All right, Defo. Have a great day. You're the man. Stay safe from that hurricane, buddy.
Yeah, I'm going to try. I think we're out of the eye there. Scotty M., ladies and gentlemen. That thing's going to whack Tampa pretty hard. It looks very devastating. Of course, Scotty and I are both from South Florida, and it appears that we're sort of outside of the danger zone. You end up, to show you, I mean, it's crazy what's happening. And we've been through many hurricane warnings and had to track these things for years and years. I've been living here over 40 years. And you do feel a sense of relief when you see that cone of death, as we call it, veering off in another direction and out of your area. But can't help but feel strong empathy and sympathy for the people that might be in its path. And this will be two times that Hurricane Helene that hit a couple of weeks ago was much further north of the track of this particular hurricane, Milton, a Jewish hurricane, for God's sake. And yet, I mean, it had devastating impact on that area, St. Petersburg and Tampa. So there's a lot of stuff out there still hasn't been collected and debris. That's one of the big dangers in these situations. And this storm appears to be enormous. So all of our thoughts are with the people. Get out of there if you're in the Tampa St. Pete area. We've never seen anything just go due east. So that's supposed to hit sometime tomorrow night. And we wish all the best and all the safety possible for the people that might end up in its path. All right, hopefully you guys aren't getting whacked by anything, especially your bookmaker. Scotty M with a couple of plays for us. As I said, we went 7-7 last week with our handicappers. I did hit on that Minnesota game to give us a slight edge on the winning week, and it saved me. Now I can have this thing for breakfast instead of breaking it over my head. We'll have Troy West, who's been on fire for us on the show. He'll join us tomorrow from the Northwest. The great Northwest hails out of Seattle, Washington, and he's been really, really hot. 10-2 on the program, documented picks right here on the show. So you'll want to tune in for that, and we'll give you whatever guidance we can as we head into what I think is going to be another great weekend of sports. Hockey tips off tonight, at least in the States. We had a couple of games involving the Devils in Czechoslovakia, and the defending Stanley Cup champions right here in town. They got the rings last night, so they don't have that kind of euphoria carryover going into tonight's game. They can focus on their game against the Boston Bruins, and 3 games on the slate. It's already hockey season, and we'll be giving you some insight into betting the NHL, which wouldn't necessarily be my area of expertise, but we'll find you some puckhead who can guide you in the right direction. Thanks so much for tuning in. For the people at No Filter, thank you, Leslie, for helping me out. We had a little technical problem yesterday as my equipment literally caught fire. Managed to work things out today, but without her, we wouldn't be able to do this. Henry doing a great job for us at No Filter. Thanks to the people at Bet Online and Greenlight Ventures. I'm Jeff DeForest. We'll see you tomorrow on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.